Hello everyone, watch this review here where they look at the Marvel Select Mephisto. Picked him up last November, I believe. And was originally intending to do him as a Christmas review. Because those reindeer, they be ringing hell's bells. But, things sort of conspired against that, so just getting to actually looking at him now. As always, these Marvel Select boxes are like really incredible and stuff, and unfortunately I didn't realize it until now, but this figure was in fact previously opened. So that really sucks. I think that somebody probably like displayed him, then saved the packaging, popped him into the original packaging, and I probably wouldn't have paid as much if I knew that he had been previously handled, because there's a certain, I don't know what to call it or whatever, but I kind of like being the first one to actually handle a figure, and having it previously open kind of cheapens that. Of course, it doesn't really stop me from buying loose, which I often do, but you'll notice that it's taped up on the edges. I noticed it was kind of popped in one corner, but I didn't take any significance to that when I first opened it. But I know a lot of people actually do save their packaging, and the Marvel Select line would be as good of a line as any to save, just for the purposes of storage and stuff, but more on that later. Let's quickly get him out of package again, apparently, and have a closer look. Let me be honest with you folks, I was buying this one more for the character it represents and the kick-ass throne than for the figure itself, but now that I have the figure actually out of box, I'm a lot more impressed than I thought I'd be. I mean, I'd previously seen some images of him and I believe a review or two, but he does look considerably better in person, especially once you start messing around with him. That doesn't really sound right at all, but I'm sure people get what I mean in the non-perverted way. First and foremost, the cape and, I guess, loin cape or loin cloth here are both a really, really soft rubber. It's a really thin type, so, I mean, it's just like the Dr. Doom, which allows him to sit despite having a cape on. Of course, you actually have to have his legs out when you're seating him. And not only is he able to sit, which is enough of an accomplishment in and of itself, but thanks to the material, it actually looks like the fabric is going in a natural way somewhat. So I mean, it's kind of like the best of both worlds, where you have the motion and mobility of fabric, but the stability of plastic, and as you'll notice, there is a fair amount of detail on this too, so definitely really cool. For those of you not familiar with Mephisto, he is I guess the equivalent of Satan in the Marvel Universe, but they can't just call him Satan because that would offend somebody out there. But most notably, he's most recently, or maybe not most recently, but most notably in the recent, he made a deal with Peter Parker to bring his Aunt May back to life, and in exchange for the dissolution of Peter Parker and Mary Jane Watson's marriage. Now, I know quite a few fans who wouldn't mind dissolving a relationship or two to get rid of Joe Quesada, but, that's another story entirely. As for this figure, the devil's in the details, and there certainly is a fair amount of detail here. Not as much articulation, because I'm somewhat disappointed that there's nothing at the waist, which is sort of a long-standing gripe between me and the Marvel Select line, but I can understand why they do that, just for the additional sculpting there, but I'm just used to having a torso joint, or at least an ab/diaphragm. But I mean, besides that, this is a pretty decent quality figure. And in some ways, this figure actually reminds me quite a bit of the Wave 10 Marvel Legends Cyclops, just due to the same design sensibilities that they opted for that for the Toy Biz line. I mean, obviously the paint is a little bit better on this one, but if you put the two side by side, you might notice a thing or two that makes it kind of reminiscent, but I don't have the other one on hand right now. But Just a quick run through of articulation while I'm still on the subject. The cape probably is removable if you take off the head, but I'll never take off the head just because I'm worried about getting it back on. But we have a decent range of motion here in the head. Goes down a little bit, up a little bit. Can't look fully up though, just because he's got that massive amount of hair. Normal shoulder joint, but we aren't going to have a bicep. Also, the arms are incredibly stiff on this. I think the full range of motion is a lot longer than I'm getting out of it, but so far I've only gotten it out this far. Single joint here at the elbow, and then the forearm rotates at the glove. Waist rotates. Most of the time you can't really see that joint so much just because the loincloth here, but it does exist. We have a normal ball joint here at the leg. Again, for some reason it's really stiff kicking out, but it rotates otherwise really easily. Single joint knee, single joint ankle, in addition to having a pivot, because everybody loves the pivot. Now, you can't see this detail, but if you look at the actual back here, we have this really cool looking spinal column, in addition to a lot of sculpting, which is always a nice touch where you have levels of sculpting in areas you aren't technically supposed to see. And it's a real testament to the observation of quality. Now, in terms of height, this figure is 7 inches, which is a little bit tall by Marvel Universe standards, but fits really readily on with the DC Universe Classics. Though again, a little bit on the taller side just because the height is there, but I don't know how tall he was supposed to be in the comics, and I guess these demonic characters probably would look cooler big anyway, so not a real issue. As for his throne here, very nice. There's a lot of detail here. No paint though. The back of the throne's a little bit more plain. It's got kind of either a wood or a fire design to it. But on the front, you'll notice that we have little skulls etched in places, in addition to having faces just sort of sticking out in all sorts of cries of agony or fear or whatever. I mean, it's definitely a really haunting looking base. I'm not 100% sure if this is the throne he uses in the comics, just because I don't have a ton of issues involving him, although basically everybody in the Marvel Universe doesn't like this guy, including villains. I think Dr. Doom has a long-standing grudge against him, because I vaguely recall Dr. Doom's mother's soul is owned by Mephisto, but on the whole, very solid figure, totally awesome addition to the Marvel Select line, and does work with Marvel Legends, I guess. Now, back to that earlier point about the whole packaging deal. I'm not sure how many people do this or not, but does anybody really save their packaging? I know that Review Spot mentioned the fact that he does save some of his packaging just for storage purposes, but I actually end up tossing out almost all of my packaging after opening it, so it doesn't even make a lot of sense why I buy things new in box. I just end up getting rid of the box anyway, but it's the whole thrill of actually opening a package that kind of appeals to me. But the Marvel Select packaging is really awesome. I do feel kind of bad whenever I throw it away, so I'm just wondering who actually saves their packaging and then uses it to store, or if everybody else is just like me, where they just end up getting rid of it. Of course, I understand there's a different dynamic with some figures. If you collect Revoltex or Figmas, you probably do save the packaging because they come with a lot of accessories, and it's really more of a formal box as opposed to a card with plastic or a clamshell or whatever. But just let me know below if you have any strong thoughts on the subject. But until next time, folks. Don't go off selling your souls or whatever.